No, well, we are officially live. We're live. Oh, okay, we already got some messages. No, Derek, I got my weekend mana enyere m gị thumbs up. Mgbe ị bịara mgbe a bịara okay, I gave you a thumbs up, but I can't. Okay, cool. Kachifo, Igbo kwenu, Igbo kwezienu, nwanne Jishike. Dalo. Can you talk about the difference? Okay, anyways, we are here. This is a later than normal live, so if we don't have the gang show up, I will not be surprised. I'm going to set the bar fairly low today. I'm going to say if we can get 10 people in here, I'll go ahead and begin. My name is Derek Ofadarma. For those who are new with the medicine shell, I teach Igbo spirituality, which is known as Odinala, which is ancestral thought, spirituality, philosophy, just all of our ancestors, metaphysics and perception of the physical and spiritual put into one word, Odinala. So that's what I teach here. If this is a topic that's interesting to you, join our Patreon community at patreon.com/the medicine shell. Patrons get full access to my library. It is over 300 books. People always ask me what books I recommend. I have a recommended folder. I have folders, topics like insipidity. I have a folder with like hundreds of insipidity symbols and things like that. I've, like I was talking about earlier, I think on last week's live, I was helping people with their tattoos at one point. So if you guys I want to do tattoo, you guys have tattoo ideas, hit me up. I'm so interested in that. Once we get 10 people in here, we'll go ahead and begin. We have 5 people in here. If you are coming in, hit the like. It will help us recommend, or YouTube recommend this to people who are like-minded and have similar interests to you. And that's what we're building here. We're building the village. In fact, our Patreon community is called The Village, right? Yeah. Okay, we got 6. Once we get 10 people, we'll go ahead and begin. Post this on the family group chat. Confuse somebody. That's your problem. You don't confuse enough people. We'll confuse somebody. Post this on the family group chat. Let them know that you are here and that they need to be here too. That we are reclaiming what is ours. If they say what the hell you're talking about, post it again. Somebody is smashing those hearts. Smash those hearts. Let me see the bells. Let me see some bells. Let me see some bells. Can you explain deeper on Awele? Yo, I'm ready. Ife Bamila. Yeah. If you're coming with the questions again today, that's gonna be a good thing because I'm ready. Let's go. Once we get 10 people in here, we'll go ahead and begin. Can you speak on the use of the pot and an altar? You guys are cooking, man. You guys are cooking. Once we get 10 people in here, we'll go ahead and begin. We are at 5. Nambi, go sleep, man. All right, good night. Midnight lover, dance the night away. There's this kid that makes like Nigerian disco on TikTok. I'm trying to remember his name. It's like NZTWCK. Newer artists always have names that are like screen names, so like it's hard to remember. I don't know if they care, but y'all got to get some catchy names, man. But man, I've got his stuff stuck in my head right now. I love it. Midnight lover, dance the night away. I'll post a link here eventually if you guys remind me. Do. Let us go ahead and begin. All right, you know what? If I'm tired of stalling, if we can get to 7 people, I'll go ahead and begin. If we get to 7 people, I'll go ahead. We are here. He said, okikekeruwa, alabwala, ala nne mmadụ na nne mmụọ, ala nne na-enye ndụ na-enye nke ọma dị n'ụwa. Ụmụ gị abịala, ọ mụ na-ekwu, aha m bụ Duru, Derek Ofadarma, ọkpara aja na ume okwe na-ekwu, otu unu fụrụ m bụ otu m dị, aka m dị ọcha, obi m dị ọcha, ihu m dị ọcha, ụkwụ m dị ọcha, mana ana m aga ije Chineke kere ka m gaa n'ụwa. Ejikwere m obi ike, obi dike, obi nze na-ekelekwe ndị mụ na ndị egede, ndị ọkpụ na ndị iche, ndị mmadụ na ndị mmụọ. Ọwa udo ka anyị ji na-aga, ọwa aka ụba ka anyị ji na-aga, ọwa aka ngọzi ka anyị ji na-aga, maka na ụmụ Chukwu na-ekwu taa otu a ka ọ ga-adị n'Eke na Orie na Afọ na Nkwọ. Ise see them bells. You say. All right, let's go ahead and begin. So I'll go here so I can see it easier. All right, let's go question by question. All right. All right, starting with my brother. Okay, let's go all the way to the top. Okay. Aurora Gazuike Adema. Can you talk about the different teaching styles certain teachers use? Interesting. Such as the more colorful or strange, even transgressive or controversial teaching styles. When you mean teachers, when you say teachers, do you mean like Odinala, like people who teach what I teach, or do you mean teaching in general? If you life's a game, if you can elaborate on that, that would be great. I think I have a fairly unique teaching style. I believe teaching is about making things simple, so I try to make things as simple as possible. Um, I think there is also interesting things to learn or to look at as far as ancestral teaching styles, things you would see back home a lot. And one of the things we don't do in the West, but was common in the past and a little bit in the present too, is this idea that muone kuzi, that spirit teaches, right? Spirit teaches. So instead of, or so one way of learning something is to build communion with a certain spirit that knows that thing. And once you do that, that spirit then guides you in the learning of that thing, right? It's a very interesting way of learning, but we use that in Kedu. So I have a traditional, or both. I have an Igbo language school, right, called Kedu, www.kedu.me. And one of the things we make sure to say is Anamasu Igbo when we introduce ourselves, right? Which is I speak Igbo, right? My name is whoever, I do whatever, Anamasu Igbo, I speak Igbo. And the reason it's important to do that is because when you make those declarations, it puts spirit in that place, right? People have a lot more power with their words than they're aware of, right? Maybe than they want to be aware of. But knowing the language begins by you saying you speak that language. You understand? Because I don't know 10% of the English language, but if anybody asks me if I speak English, I'll say yes, right? So if you only know 0.0000001% of Igbo, you just say I can speak it. And the results are incredible. People learn very fast and so forth. We don't, that kind of thing, right? So that concept is aligned with this concept known as Mua Uzi, or a guiding spirit, right? Having a guiding spirit or being in the guiding spirit, right? So Mua Uzi would be like in a more traditional Odinala sense, when a person was to become like a carver, like they're going to be carving maybe chairs, right? There would be the ancestral spirit that introduced this craft to the community, oftentimes is still venerated. And so what you'll do is you'll give that spirit an offering, and you're going to exist in your craft as that spirit, as a conduit of that spirit, as an arm of that spirit, right? And that's very often enough for a person to learn. One of the things that this is aligned with, because I think it's hard for somebody who learns in the Western context to kind of understand this. One of the concepts or the principles this is aligned with is an ilu that says, "Oko neche uche, mana uche neche oko," which is the feet wait for wisdom, but wisdom waits for the feet, right? So very often, sometimes being in the spirit of something, saying, I am that thing, and then start going, the learning begins at that point, right? I think in the West, we have the mentality of sit still, get the knowledge downloaded, and then once you're up to a certain par, you go, right? But as far as Odinala goes, it's start moving, right? And as you move, the knowledge will come. The knowledge will come in that kind of thing, right? Which I come to find is the more reasonable way to learn, or the more sensible way. One of the teachers for our Igbo language class is in a masquerade society. Which one was it? I think it's Ekeleke. It's like stilt walking. And I asked him, okay, how do they teach you how to do it? And he says you go into the forest at night with all the older kids and younger kids and that kind of thing, everybody that's in the masquerade society, and they play the music, and everybody just dances that dance from night till morning, nonstop, night till morning. And then when you start feeling the spirit, right? When you start feeling, okay, I can do it, you get on your stilts and you go. That they don't tell you how, they don't do whatever, but you just watch, you're there. The older kids and the older men are doing it and that kind of thing. You're like, okay, I can do it. And then you hop up and go. It's very much almost like the Black American tradition with like a cipher, right? If you want to become a rapper, it very often begins with you seeing other people do it and you feeling, I guess they call it the bug, whatever they call it, right? You feel like, okay, let me step in and do this thing too. And then all of a sudden you step in and go. You're not going to be good when you begin, but the more you do it, the better you get, right? Right? So I find that is a very interesting ancestral method of learning and teaching. Look, there's 18 people already. Whenever I say, okay, let's wait for X amount of people, it's like you guys wait for once I ring that bell, everybody comes in. So I'll do more. But yeah, if that's what you're talking about, life is a game, cool. But I have a feeling that I didn't answer your question. So go ahead and hit me with another one. Can you explain Awele? Yes, Awele. Awele is like, I think in English, the term for Awele is theophany. Theophany, which is when something reveals its divine nature. As far as Odinala goes, every single human being is of a divine nature, no matter what form you are in. But maybe the rest of the world can't see it yet, right? Maybe the people around you can't feel it yet. Maybe you don't know that it's there, right? So Awele is like, and this is the analogy I always use to explain Awele. So if you guys have heard it before, maybe you guys can speak along with me, right? So Awele is like a seed, okay? Now, in the ancestral view, a seed is already a forest. You understand? It's just maybe the world around us, we can't see it yet. But this seed I'm holding, I'm not holding a seed, but this seed I'm holding is already a forest, right? Now, how do we know that the seed is a forest? Because if I put this seed down, its destiny is to become a forest. In the ancestral worldview, your destiny and what you currently are not separate. What you are to become and what you already are not separate, right? For the rest of the world, we need the play out of time to appear for us to have evidence of it, right? Or to get a clear picture of it. But whatever it is you are to become, you have always been that thing. So you put the seed down on the ground. It rains, it interacts with rain, it interacts with soil, it interacts with air, it interacts with light. It starts growing roots, right? It starts growing root. It sprouts a little something, right? Maybe a little snail comes and chews on its leaves. It lays eggs there. More snails are crawling around. Whatever eats snail shows up, it starts eating it. It defecates. That defecation has seeds in it. Those seeds start producing more plants. Suddenly you have this little bush, right? They're all interacting with the elements and so forth. One of the snails drop and die. The fungus comes and starts eating it. The mycelium network feeds the soil. The feeding of the soil strengthens the plants. One of them starts producing seeds. Another one starts producing fruits. Another one starts producing fruit. Those fruit seeds start growing, right? If I come back to this spot in 200 years, I will see that an entire forest exists. Birds have come and perched. They've defecated those seeds in there, right? All types of things. After 200, maybe 100, maybe 50 years, I'll come back and see that there's an entire forest that came from this single seed, right? But it was always that seed. Now, when the seed becomes the forest, that's what we refer to as Awele. When the seed becomes the forest, that's what we refer to as Awele. So life is Ije Awele, the journey towards Awele, the journey towards showing your full self, not necessarily becoming your full self, right? Revealing your full self, right? Like when a flower does this and it's got all the little things in there, it doesn't mean that when it opened, those things appeared, right? They were there when it was closed too. The petals and rivets and all that stuff, all the colors and that kind of thing. So that's Awele. That's Awele. When you see people take titles, the title, not all of them, some of the titles, especially the more traditional ones, are the person manifesting Awile, that they've reached Awile, that the person has reached Awile, or I've now shown you my full nature. So two ways that this gets enshrined ritually is like for men, you receive an ikenga when you're young, when you're in the warrior age grade. This is the age grade where if a war pops off, you're gonna go fight, right? And in this warrior age grade, everybody's ikenga is the same. If you Google ikenga, most of the ikenga you're gonna see is gonna be this. It's gonna have a sword, and it's gonna have a little skull. And it's gonna be holding it like this, right? Sword and a skull. And then as you get older, right, once you become like a mature man, and in this context, in the ancestral context, matured man is you've had kids, you've built a home, you have a wife, um, and you've achieved. In fact, there are three. I'm all over the place. There are three ways. My dad taught me this. There are three ways it's measured, which is ipa, right? Ipa chi, ipa mado, and ipa ako. Ibachi means that you, let me start with Ibaku. Ibaku means you have created wealth, you have created abundance, right? You've created wealth, you've created abundance. You've not only become successful in your own realm, you are also an avenue by which other people become successful, right? Think about it like the sun. The sun is of a certain nature. If you're near the sun, you feel that nature, you become that nature, right? Things that are near the sun become hot, right? So things that are successful, if you're shining, if you've achieved that will it, are also going to be successful, right? So you're pulling your world up around you. That is Ipa. Ipa Madu is you've brought people together. You've brought people together. Most common way of bringing together people together is marriage, but you are seen as a person who, when there's an issue, you're the person who can mend people back together, which is hyper important in the ancestral context. Now, remember this particular thing, because everything from healing to government to law is all about repairing relationships. I was just having a conversation with Udochi about this. If you guys don't know, Udochi is the one who makes Umutandi Oto, the Mazi Abu cartoon series. She was on one of our streams way back, right? And so Ipa Madu, you've brought people together. You're a community builder. You're a family builder. You're a friendship builder, right? When those bonds break, you're able to bring them back together. You're able to grow them and strengthen them, right? You've also produced humans. You have more kids and that kind of thing. And then Ipachi is you're showing Awele, right? You are a living and walking representative of your own chi, right? When a person has done those three things, a community will give the person a title, or they themselves will go and give themselves a title. Both of them are both means are valid. Um, and traditionally, because you've achieved Awele, they would take a razor and they would cut these marks on your head. Like they would cut these marks on your head called Ichi, which is you've revealed your light face, your light face. The Ichi marks are simulating the sun, the rising sun. So you've revealed your light face as well as your human face, or your spiritual face, half spirit, half human. Akala manu, akala mo, right? And then there'll be a certain way you dress and all that stuff. But at that point, you are now walking in the world representing your chi, right? Representing your chi, representing your ancestors in real time, living as them, that kind of thing. So that is that. Doo, 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 doo. Let me go back. Can you talk about different? Okay, let's not do that. All right. Can Indiche see us clearly, or do they see us as blurry blobs of energy? I don't know, man. I've never become. I'm not an Ichi. I mean, I don't know. I've been called Ichi, but I'm not. I don't know. I don't. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. I've never seen things from any other eyes than my own. Uh, how do Igbo people traditionally build houses architecturally? Dude, good question. Do they? How do they understand it? Oh yeah, this is a dope question. So I've been looking at traditional architecture, right? I've been looking at traditional architecture, and some overlapping principles that I've seen is again very common with Africa, the use of fractals, right? A fractal is a shape that repeats itself within itself and repeats itself within itself and repeats itself within itself. Okay. And so the use of fractals, a traditional compound is going to look like a miniature of a traditional town, okay, which is going to look like a miniature of the understanding of the cosmos, right? And so most Igbo architecture I have seen uses four corners, right? So square. It uses four corners, and then there's an empty space in the middle. So this is what I've seen with homes. There's an empty space in the middle. In that empty space, there's often a tree that's growing from there. That tree is usually the family shrine. But that empty space is a sacred space. It's also incorporated the concept of chi na eke, the merger of something and nothing, right? To create a whole. So it's like a, let's say this is the empty space, and then they've got the whatchamacallit, the home wraps around it like that. I'm trying to remember what else. Usually it'll be like the ubi, which is like the father's shrine, the centerpiece, which is like everybody, the whole family shrine, that kind of thing. A palo, like a meeting space, which is usually towards the front. So like palo over here, the ubi, the father's thing here. Or what am I doing? The father's thing over here. And then on the sides would be like the rooms for the wife or the wives. And that's what I've seen. That's what I've seen traditionally, like pre-colonially. And what I'm describing is probably the home of a wealthy person, of a wealthy man, right? Otherwise, you still see that same structure in like a compound, but it'll, instead of it being one person's whole property, it'll be like different siblings, like uncle here, uncle here, uncle here, uncle here, uncle here, uncle, that kind of thing. And then maybe up top is like the founder of the family, or the head, the mother and father that everybody comes from, and that kind of thing. Like in my compound at home, it's not like a perfect square, but like it's the same thing. There's an empty middle, is empty, where everybody gathers and plays and that kind of thing, and has family court and all that stuff. And then it's behind, our house is in the front, and then to the sides there's houses, and it's just like a square with houses around it, right? And then when we were little, we would just eat breakfast and go backyard and play in that empty square all day. So I don't know. That's just some things that I've seen, but there's a lot more I can discuss. It's also important to understand that our ancestors also had architectural trends, right? Just like you do in the modern day. So a lot of what I'm going to be describing is going to be from a certain era, but there were trends before and after, right? There was a trend where there was a time where people liked really high roofs, like high ass roofs. There was a time where they didn't. There was a time where this certain specific style of two-story home was being built. My great grandfather built one. And then when I married my wife, we went to her compound and found that they had the exact same one there too, from one of her ancestors. So that was really interesting. So I didn't know. Anyways, indeed, cheers, yes, Indigo. Indigo Phoenix. Oh, we got a new name. Indigo Phoenix Skies. Phoenix, thank you very much for that. I just started reading Lepers of the Magic Dawn. I was like, does the author breathe? I told you, hey, I don't know if you're here in the last live, but I said exactly that. Does the author breathe? Because it's like he keeps going down, but I'm enjoying the content book. It's incredible. If somebody says Lepers of the Magical Dawn is the best book written on Odinala, I would agree. It's not my favorite. It used to be my favorite, but I'm a huge on Healing Insanity right now. But Leopards is definitely my base. It's where I got a lot of my early learning from, and I always like when I'm doing my research, I refer back to okay, what do they say on leopards about this topic and that kind of thing. So leopards is incredible, but yeah, I think he was in a trance when he wrote it, and I know because I know the author and I've seen him in a trance. That's how he sounds. Can you talk about the masquerade societies and how they teach? Okay, good. Okay, dope. Yeah, masquerade societies. So masquerade societies or ndi otu mmụọ, right? Otu mmụọ means single spirit, people of a single spirit. Masquerade societies were individuals who were masters of dealing with a certain spirit, a certain class of spirits, just something in general, but they were just masters at dealing with spirits, right? And what tends to happen is a masquerade society will you always be a fraternity of men, right? And with I don't want to say there's exceptions, but like I know with Owu, one woman can be an Owu. It's usually an old woman that does a certain dance that only members can see and that kind of thing, right? But the masquerade societies are usually a fraternity of men. One time a year, usually in most Igbo communities, usually on the Onwa Agon, the sixth moon, the masquerade society will take over the community. And when the masquerade society takes over the community, they are the government, they are the court system, they are everything. This is the time of the year in like modern day where the masquerades come out that whip people, right? So it becomes like a little bit of a dictatorship traditionally when they took charge because they were again the masters at dealing with certain spirits. Either they were cleansing the land or doing whatever. So every community has a different masquerade society that does that for them, right? Some of them will have ekbe, some of them will have omade, some of them will have owu. We have owu in my place, depending on what the people there decided is appropriate. Mao is another one from Olu. And what happens is when outside of that time of the year where they're kind of in charge, the masquerade society is also very often like a thing of prestige to join, right? More so in the past than today. It's a thing of prestige to be a part of. And in a lot of communities like my own, all the men have to be a part of it somehow, right? So what happens is oftentimes when you join, it also becomes like it's a mystery school. So not only are you a master at dealing with this particular spirit, but you're also learning things that pertain to that spirit, learning things that pertain to the community, learning secret codes, just learning different disciplines and so forth within the community, right? Some of them you're learning how to make and work with different weapons, different medicine, different things like that, right? And it's an entire art form or discipline, a school, right? It's a school in very many respects. Like with Owu, when the way Owu works is that everybody has to be blessed into Owu in my community, but blessed in doesn't necessarily mean you're a member, right? In the modern day, they bless in everybody except like church kids. Like if they know your parents or church people, they leave you alone. But we were blessed in. I was blessed in when I was like five. My younger brother as well. And being blessed in just means you're a wow, a child of wow, which means that um, when that time of the year when they take over, there are certain curfews, but you don't have to follow it. Certain O members will, or I'm sorry, when you do great things in life, like maybe you build your home or you achieve something great, you graduate from school, O will come and celebrate with you. They'll throw a dance, they'll throw a big thing for you, just little things like that. But then if I wanted to go deeper, which I probably eventually will, if I wanted to go deeper, right, I would get a full initiation. And then once you get that full initiation, you kind of have access to whatever knowledge and spirit that they deal with and so forth. But the way there's this really good documentary, I'm still trying to get a hold of it. I've only seen clips. I think her name is Jaleel Blessine or something like that. She did a documentary on O. And so when kids would join O, like young kids, they would usually join at the age of 7 in the past, and they learn how to do the O dance and all that stuff. Usually by embodying the spirit, not necessarily through instruction, right? So the same way I spoke earlier about how you learn the ekaleke, the same way you learn the O, you they're doing it. The spirit hits you, you start doing it too, right? And so, yeah, different things like that. I read that one of the things in OU is that once a kid joins, like a man joins a kid, a young boy joins OU, he has to stop eating with his mom. He has to stop eating with his mom. Just things like that. So they have these little rules that govern it and all that stuff too. So those are the masquerade societies. Yeah, how different. Okay, how do DBS teach? Every DBS is going to teach the way the DBS wants to teach. But very often they believe fundamentally that you don't put knowledge into somebody, you pull it out of them because it's already there. That if you're a DBA, you would actually know this naturally. You would understand these things naturally, right? And as a teacher, you're just bringing something out of the person. So you don't see as much instruction as you see, kind of watch me as I do what I'm doing, and okay, do it now. Just do the thing, whether you know how to do it or not. Just do it, right? They do it. No, that's wrong. Do it again, and then all of a sudden you start doing it right. So, which is interesting too, because I think that carries over culturally. A lot of us in diaspora, we complain our parents don't teach us this, don't teach us that, but it's kind of in alignment with how the culture teaches or considers or treats teaching in general, right? You just when it's time, do it, right? Whether you do it good or not, just do it. You know what I'm saying? It'll come out of you, and it usually does. So I don't know. But oh yeah, I was gonna say, when it comes to DBAs, teaching is done by your guiding spirit, right? It's done by your algo. It's done by your algo. So a lot of what you're learning is how to listen to your algo, how to be in community with your algo, how to be guided by your algorithm. That's what you're learning when you're being a DB. You're not necessarily learning step one, do this, step one, do that, right? Now, because the cultural context is not there, like in our traditional medicine class, we also teach the steps and all that stuff because you're not walking around seeing these things like other people. But then we're also teaching how to tap into your alcohol, how to hear from your alcohol, how to know when your alcohol is communicating with you, and then have that be your guide as you're learning and so forth, right? So it's interesting because I think and I will say African too, right? I think there's this African relationship with knowledge that is kind of different than what you see in other places, but you see it manifest in like today. Unfortunately, one of the only places where we trust, I guess, our method enough to keep it African is in how we create music, right? And I always say this when I saw this, when it clicked for me, right? We still use a very ancestral way of making music that no other group of people in planet Earth uses, right? And that is this. And I'm gonna use rap, right? Because that's my genre, right? If some a producer is making a beat, right? He's not making a beat and reading it from a book and doing the high note and the low note. He's doing what he feels like doing because he's a producer. It's already in him, right? He's a producer. There's some people who you give the producer equipment, and in 100 years nothing comes out. But there's some people who, the minute they see a person producing, they start like their ikenga fires up and they want to be a part of it. And they want to go and produce something, right? Those people will be good producers because it's in them. It's already in them. That fire is actually what's going to teach them. So with that fire, they start messing around and start making beats and that kind of thing. Da, 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 and finally, they make one that somebody likes. And the person who likes it goes, "Okay, I like that. I got a verse. Okay, I'm going to write a verse, right?" Now, this person again, he didn't go to the Juilliard Art School of making verses or anything like that, right? He wasn't regimented into verse making. It's already in him, right? And that beat, that thing that's in him, that beat brought it out. So now he wants to make the connection because it's supposed to happen, right? So he lays his verse. His friend comes in, "Okay, I like that. Let me do my verse." And then in the end, we have a full song. Nobody in the room told anybody what to do. Nobody in the room told anybody how to do this thing. Nobody in the room. This whole thing happened without anybody following any real formula, if that makes sense. They were just pulling out what's inside of them by listening to their chi, right? How do you know? One step in listening, knowing how to listen to your chi is what things give you light. They felt light and they said, okay, there it is, right? This beat right there, that one gives me life. That one gives me light. Let me record on it, right? Can you guys hear me? This whole time I didn't have my mic here. I hope you guys can hear me, right? This beat gives me life. Okay, his verse is crazy. Okay, that makes me want to write a verse. Okay, because it gave me like just going by that internal thing, right? Same thing with just dancing on a dance floor, right? You hear a song you like, you're gonna dance better. You hear a song you don't like, you're not gonna dance very well. This is if we can take that concept and apply it to architecture and science and space travel and all these other things, you man, but we get scared, right? We get scared. So I'm gonna live my rap. I'm gonna show some examples as we go. So because I think it's something we need to get back to. I think it is something we need to get back to. That is actually the way things are supposed to be done. Let's do that there. All right, where are we at? Let's go back to the top. Just started reading Leopards, very cool. Talk about Masquerade Society is very cool. What is the association with red dirt and the location? Where it's significant? Oh yeah, SC. No, that's a good question. So during slavery, they were very mindful of who they sent where, right? The big myth they tell everybody is that the whole of slavery was about picking cotton, right? And then they tell you that the average slave owner, enslaver, I think it's a better term, the average enslaver had like 2 to 3 people, not families, people. So you can't really pick a giant plantation with 2 to 3 people, right? Well, the actual truth is, I can make money from you picking cotton, absolutely. But I can really make money if you know how to do C-sections, if you know how to make horseshoes and metal tools, hammers and things like that. If you know how to do all of these other things that are higher, there's a premium on. You understand? So one of the things that people in America, slaveholders in America would do was they would look for people they would go to places where people had certain skills, right? The idea that slavery was unskilled labor is absolutely not true. They would go to places where people had specific skills in alignment with what they needed, right? So certain parts of Africa, people knew how to till and farm on red soil, which is difficult. It's not easy, but they knew how to farm red soil. And one of the people who knew how to farm red soil were Igbo people, right? So they would target Igbo people. Now, conveniently, the places in America that have red soil are close to the north, but they're not so close that they're now no longer slave states. So you would bring in all these Igbo people, but you would target Igbo people that had specific skills based on what villages do these certain crafts, right? So you're hitting 2 birds on one stone. You have somebody who can work the soil, and then you also have somebody who can, I don't know, make metal equipment for the factories up north where you can get money, real money, right? So yeah, they wherever there was red soil, there's typically Igbo ancestors. Wherever there was ranching, there's typically Fulani or Senegambia people, that kind of thing, right? If we live by a swamp, we look for Africans who lived on that swamp, and it was the Africans that would teach them how to live on that soil, against their will, of course, how to live in that environment, how to till that land, how to do that stuff, and that knowledge was very profitable, right? So that's why. So you go to places like Virginia, heavy Igbo presence in Virginia, ancestrally, people have scattered and that kind of thing. Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, Tennessee, Kentucky, right? Those are places. And it was interesting too. Before I even knew this is how I know a lot of what's going on is ancestral. Before I even knew this, we have a group study on my Patreon. And at the group study, it's a Zoom call, so we're all on Zoom, things like that. And people start like every now and then they'll say where they're from. The amount of times I hear Maryland, the amount of times I hear Virginia, the amount of times I hear DC, I guess DC, the same DMV. The amount of times I hear Kentucky more in my group study than I've heard anything about Kentucky my whole life, right? Tennessee, North Carolina. The amount of the recurring of these places tells me that. And it wasn't that I said, hey, if you're from these states, your ancestors are probably Igbo, right? People just turn on the cameras and I'm looking at their family like, oh, of course. Right? Then they start saying where they're from, and I'm like, of course. You understand? I was taught all these things by a member of the village. Village is our Patreon community. He was the one, two guys actually kind of sat me down and talked about, because they study these things like professionally. And they taught me like they were sending people here because of this soil and they had this skill and this and that. So I learned this from the population here. So I've been more. No. But yeah, Igbo people know how to farm red soil. So where there's red soil, you'll see Igbo people. Would you be open to posting certain herbs used in rituals? Yes. In fact, hold on. Let me get a book. I got a book for you. That's the night away. Midnight love. You guys gotta hear this kid's music. It's cool as hell. Hold on. Let me find it. Okay, so the book I'm looking at is Healing Insanity. I'm trying to find the page with the cures, and I'm not gonna spend too long trying. If I don't find it, I don't find it. Midnight Love. That's the night away. Okay, this is a list of diagnoses of psychiatric. So this book is specifically on Ogmuara, right? One of the reasons I like it is because it's specific. I feel like you can go very in depth with specifics. The general stuff I have a very strong grasp on. So whenever I get a chance to encounter some specifics and things that I may not know, that always lights me up. So that's why I'm really into this book right now. I am looking for the list of herbs. We study this book in our traditional medicine class too, right? We walk through some of the parts together, the case studies, the different diagnoses, things like that. So it's a really good one. Let me see if I can find some herbs that are used. I have some memorized, but I would rather just be able to. I don't even know where it's. I should go to the Midnight Lover. I should stop that. Shit. Okay, I'm gonna give it one more try, and if I don't find it, I don't find it. Because this is very hard to scroll through a giant ass book while you're on live. Ara, notions of Ara. Healer, medicine, deity, initiating the medicine deity. Master healer, apprentice, and environment. Main objectives, consulting. Healing, roots and treatment. All right, 480. Page 480. There we go. All right, so treat because significant destructive capacity. These are insects, healing insects. I bet you've never heard of that before. Okay, so here are some herbs that he identifies that's good for dealing with psychiatric issues, right? Okay, Ntinwambe is one. This one doesn't have an English name here. So Ntinwambe, it is taken for sneezing. It's taken for sneezing. There's Obocha, which is a shrub-like plant whose root is used for mouth and nose issues. That kind of thing. Akwụkwọ Ogirishi is super important. Ogirishi is what you use to build Agun altars if you're using like a tree. It's used and administered in the eyes and the nose. It doesn't say specifically what for, or it does, but I'd have to like read the book. Okwa, what's another one? Osisiajo. It's used for calming, uh, like a calming effect, like a sedative. Raulfia. I don't know if I'm saying that one right. He just writes the English name. Let me see what he uses it for. Good for psychiatric disturbances, and I lost the page. But yeah, there's a lot of them. Like for the psychiatric ones, there are like stimulants, and then there are sedatives. There are ones that deal with very specific psychiatric issues. And then, of course, when healing, medicine is mixed with ritual. That book gives a few, but there are hundreds that are unnamed in there. But those are a couple. Those are a couple. There were Dion. Also, okay, whatever. Okay. Also, if I pray to Amadiaha for justice, if something was done wrong to me, would this be considered seeking revenge? No, no, it wouldn't. No, no. If you ask for revenge, that's seeking revenge. If you ask for justice, that's a totally different thing. I've heard we're not supposed to seek revenge within Odinani, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not good to seek revenge in Odinani, right? It's not advisable. But if you're asking for justice, that's a different thing from revenge. So justice is totally normal. Or there is a form of revenge that you can ask for, right? Oh boy. It's like back, like I think Christians call it back to sender, right? If this person does it to me, let it happen to them. That maybe you can classify that as revenge. I think I would. You can. That's very common and normal, right? What this person does to me, let it happen to them. You understand? But you can't wish for something like, let's say somebody did something to you and you want something greater than what happened to you to happen to them, because now you owe a debt, right? Now you owe a debt. Do you notice a lot of biblical correlation with Igbo spirituality? I do. Have you seen the Bible with Apocrypha, all 88 books? I would love to see all 88 books. I don't know if I'll ever have time to read all 88 books. That would be really interesting. But yeah, a lot of commonality. A lot of commonality. Because the thing Christianity comes from is cosmology, but it's not. Christianity is not cosmology. It's a totally different thing. It comes from cosmology, and all over the world cosmology is uniform because it's people describing reality regardless of how strange it sounds, right? We're all describing real things. You understand? And so it comes from that. It comes from a people who initially understood that, right? But yeah, you see a lot of correlations, especially like when I read the Old Testament, it feels like I'm reading things fall apart, right? I'm not saying Igbo people are Jews. I don't want to do that. So, but a lot of things like that, like things like your father's blessings and all these different things that if you look at, they look very Igbo. There's even one. I wish I could remember the book. There's a book in the Old Testament where they're giving instructions on how to build an altar. And it is at least 80% the exact same instructions for building an Igbo altar. In fact, they describe a figure that looks, from my memory, a lot like an Ikenga. So if you can find whatever biblical page that says how to describe an altar, how to build an altar, it's similar. But it's not because we're like connected like that. It's because we're all describing the same thing, right? We're all talking about the same thing. We're all talking about what's real. You understand? Every culture in the world has its version of a boat, and it has the same general shape, right? So it's the thing that gets you to float across the water, right? But yeah, a lot of correlations. A lot of correlations. They're very similar. You understand? In fact, I think Odinala, and I'm not the only one that says this, but if you, let's say you're a Christian and you understand Odinala, you understand Christianity a lot more, right? It doesn't work the other way around. But if you understand Odinala, you understand Christianity a lot more, right? things start making a lot more sense. Like, oh, okay, that's why they did that. It's because of all fall. Okay, that's ooh, that kind of thing, right? Oh, that raw, that's all fall, that kind of thing. Okay, since it's all fall, that's why he's acting this way, that kind of thing. So, the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are the truth about the Ten Commandments is that they are what we call in Odinala, Iwu Allah. Iwu Allah. The Ten Commandments are not supposed to be followed by everybody, right? They're not for everybody. They're for specifically the people of the land of Israel. Now, why do I know this? Because when in Odinala, we understand that before a people settle on land, they will ask the earth what the earth's laws are. What are your rules? How can we coexist with you peacefully? What are your edicts or whatever we want to call it? And the land will give these certain taboos. They're not the same thing as laws. They're not the same thing as the laws between two people. Oh, if you steal this, you got to give me that, and da 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 da. It just says on this land, right? In order for you to live here for generations as indigents, you have to follow these laws. You have to keep in accord with these laws. Once you break accord with these laws, the time is ticking on your existence, which is exactly then you understand. Oh, that's why they banished the Jews and or the Hebrews and all that. Then it makes sense, right? It clicks. You understand? Because the same thing, if you stop following that or that original pact with the land and you violate Iwala, you're out. Now, there's going to be a certain group of people within the group that are responsible for understanding that relationship and managing it. Those are the Levites in the Igbo tradition. Those are the Osu Levites in the Hebrew tradition, the Osu in the Igbo tradition. A lot of cultures have their version of it, right? A lot of them will have their version of it. A lot of the people in Africa that we refer to as kings, especially in like non-Abrahamic Africa, a lot of the kings they're not kings. They're actually the ritual keepers of that law. They're the person who's tasked with making sure that relationship with the earth, with the ancestors, with the creator is intact, right? They're the spiritual babysitter for everybody. You understand? So it makes you understand the Bible a lot better, but not doesn't go. If you try to do it the other way around, you're going to be, oh, okay, they must be Hebrews and all that shit, which will lead you on the wrong path, I think. So, udo na ngozi, udo nwanne keke ide. Ahụ ọdịghị mma. Cool. Or like caterpillars and butterflies. Okay, I missed a question. Do you notice? Okay, I don't understand that. Jacqueline, if you want to elaborate what you mean by caterpillars and butterflies, that'd be great. If we remove blood sacrifice from the Odinala way, can one still be powerful? Are there alternative ways to fulfill the same rituals where blood would be needed? No. No, there's not. No. But you can be powerful without, you don't need to do rituals to be powerful, right? Most powerful people. Let me take that back, right? I was about to say most powerful people have not done rituals, but now this is the wrong week to make that statement, right? We now know that all of them do that shit, right? We don't need to do it as nefariously as the examples that have been set forward this past week. But no, if the thing requires sacrifice, it requires sacrifice, and it requires the sacrifice that it requires. But it's not a lot of people, because blood is so visceral and loud. A lot of people, when they think of African traditions, they get stuck on that, and they think that that's the whole thing, which becomes a problem because a lot of people will come out of church and say, "Okay, I'm an Odinala person now," and they think that's how you pray, is just by killing something. So they'll just be killing chickens up and down. That's nonsense. You understand, right? It's like this, right? A chicken is food for a human, right? So you kill the chicken, you give the blood to more to spirit, you eat the rest. It's not normal. Whether or not, no matter what your religion or whatever is, you're the blood will spill when you kill a chicken, right? It's just okay. We use this to give acknowledgement. Same way you pour libations, you drink a little bit. It's the same thing. Joining Odinala and then just killing chickens and goats up and down is the equivalent of like maybe you were, I don't know, a Mormon, and then you decide, okay, I'm not a Mormon anymore. I'm now going to be uh, African traditional woo woo. And let's just take away the chicken. Let's use libations. Everybody knows the logic of libations because it's still culturally relevant in the United States, right? But imagine somebody just keeps buying crates and crates of alcohol. And they're sitting there just spilling alcohol all day, spilling alcohol all day. That's not what's going on. I'm having this drink. I am one with you. I'm going to give you some because if you're always with me. You're always going to be with me. I'm not going to forget you. Wherever I go, you go. Whatever I drink, you drink. We are one. I'm going to walk for you in mado as you walk for me in one. So here's your drink too. That's all it is, right? That's all it is. So, a lot of people are like, oh, do we have to do sacrifices and things like that? If something requires sacrifice, yeah, but 99% of things won't require a sacrifice, right? It's not a normal everyday thing. But people do give normal everyday sacrifices because they kill their own food. They don't get the chicken from KFC. KFC sends the blood somewhere, right? And at this point, I'm willing to believe whatever you guys put on the table for where they send it, right? Because I've read some documents this week, boy. But yeah, the blood. If you're going to eat an animal, the blood will spill no matter what. It's just gonna happen, right? It's just we know that okay, we give this to those who receive it or that which receives it, and then we take the rest, right? You're in communion. You understand? That's the everyday of it. It's not like every time you need to pray, you need to crack open a chicken. That kind of thing. So yeah. No, it's not avoidable. A lot of people ask me that question because that part is, if you grow up in the West, animals are your friend, right? The cartoons are animals. They're talking to you. Hi, how are you doing? They care about you. They want to teach you the ABCs. You watch you're deep. You watch the Disney, the Goofy movie, or you have this deep empathy with these dogs. You're seeing yourself in this dog. You get the pet, and then so it's hard for people in these societies to imagine that animals get killed, but they go to KFC every day. They get a pepperoni pizza every day. They eat a hamburger every day. So the blood will spill. It's just what it is. But in this context, I'm not going to a place where the thing's already been killed for me. Often I'll kill it myself, right? Modern Nigeria, they got all that shit too. But if I kill it myself, I'm going to give what belongs to who, where it belongs. I'm going to give the blood to that which takes the blood. I take the flesh, for I take the flesh. That's really it, right? That's really all it is. So yeah, if the sacrifice is necessary where it's necessary, and the killing of chicken it's normal. It's very normal. Unless like maybe you're a vegetarian, then we can now talk about your Odinala and how different it is, that kind of thing. So I don't know. Do titled women have anything similar to Ichi marks? Yeah, titled women get Ichi marks too. Titled women get Ichi marks as well, right? There's a lot of pictures of it online too, but titled women have Ichi marks as well. What's more common with titled women is the ivory. So you get ivory on your wrist and you get ivory on your ankles. In the past, you didn't take off the ivory. In the past, today it's different, but in the past they didn't take off the ivory. You'd clean around it and that kind of thing. And then like very like elder title, like depending on how powerful the title is, when the woman walks, it's usually very old women at this point, when she walks, two men will hold her hands and kind of walk her. If you've seen the Oba of Benin, the Oba of Benin is the apex leader of Benin, the Benin Empire. If you see how the Oba of Benin walks, that's the same tradition, right? Which tells you something about that Oba of Benin that Benin people might not know, but I know, right? Benin people might not know, but I know. But that stool was originally a woman's. Originally, a woman sat on that stool, right? Not anymore, but originally. How do I know? Look what he's wearing, right? Look at the fact that he's walked like an old titled woman. They walk. Oh, that's the Igbo one. This is the Benin one. No, dude, trust me, that was a woman. He's simulating a woman, right? We're gonna take a lot of the famous Benin mask. That mask that everybody that's well known. It's a woman, right? So titled women, if they're walking like in public, you get held two hands. They have two escorts, ivory, ivory, ivory. But that's like really, really old, super, very high titled women. The rest of them, just the privilege of wearing the ivory, that kind of thing. So, but women also get Ichi marks too. Women also get Ichi marks. So, I don't know. Ndewo Ikenga wines. I wish I can. I'm clacking the glass with you, or I'm giving a toast with you there. Where am I at? If we remove, okay, we already did that. I don't know why it shows my ads instead of my display name. Phoenix, it's all good. We know who you are. There's the night away. I gotta stop singing all these damn lies, man. I gotta be cool. You know. All right, let me scroll back. Yeah, I can hear you fine. Okay, that's cool. Okay, YouTube did change it. Thank you for that. And Dion. Something in my hair. You guys should have let me know there was something in my hair this whole time. There you go. Na 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 na. Yeah, it sounds better now. They usually target blacksmiths in Igbo land. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I was talking about earlier. So the money was in people with skilled trades, and they would know you had a skill, or they would have a rough guess if you were from a skilled trade by looking for people from very famous towns that are famous for it, right? Or they'll see like, okay, what physical features do people from these towns have, or from this town and that town have? Okay, I want those people with those features. Go look for those people, right? And I remember one time they used to target the Oka Nkwere. A lot of the smithing towns were super, super targeted towards the ending of the slave trade, right, in Igbo land. They honed in really heavy on Igbo land towards the end, right? So I don't know. Albany, Georgia. I don't know. They are Fulani and Kanuri. Interesting. Very interesting. South Carolina, probably South Carolina. Yeah, it's not like a hard like, you know what I mean? Like if a family is on a plantation in North Carolina, it won't take much for imagination to see them end up in South Carolina for one reason or another, right? But that's the zone that they would get sent to. They may end up elsewhere. So with that focal point, the percentages are high. In fact, I remember my sister saying when she went to North Carolina, like a lot of people look like they're from our village specifically. Actually, like they look like from our town, right? I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But if you pan out from there, you get the same thing. I think Igbo is probably the highest percentage African blood group among Black Americans. I think it's Igbo. Yeah, I think it's either Igbo, Senegambia, or Congo, but it's probably Igbo, right? It's Igbo. And then Trinidadians, the same. Jamaican, I think the highest is Akan, like Ghanaian, but then second would be Igbo. Yeah. A lot of the English colonies is going to be Igbo. Some places like Cuba, Brazil, Yoruba, very Yoruba. Ewe, Yoruba, that kind of thing. Virginia family is planning a reunion. I'm on the committee. Very cool. Any ideas for low key rituals I can introduce in the family or do on the land while there? Don't want to raise suspicion. Rituals are a means to an end. So you have to kind of know what you want done to then infuse. But I would, another member another member of the village has actually, I don't know if he's still doing it, but for a while he was working on setting up an isusu, like a money pool amongst his family members. I think, go for it. I think that'd be a cool idea if that kind of thing, like everybody contributes regularly, and then it gets to be one person's turn, then the next person's turn, then the next person's turn, next person's turn, that kind of thing to receive it, right? That would be cool. I think it helps with financial stability within the family. It's incredible for things like business loans, home loans, all these different things. So yeah, go for it. That'd be cool. No. Can you explain deeper on Omenala and how it's established? Yeah, I'll do my. So there's two things when it comes to um, like the ancestral culture, right? There's Odinala with a D, Omenala with an M, right? Odinala is as it is on the land. So that's typically what I talk about here. Observations, thoughts, spirits, connection, all these different things, right? The facts, like what are we dealing with? What's reality? And then Omenala is how you act on the land. Odinala as it is on the land. Omenala how you act on the land, what you do on the land. Omenala gets translated as culture often, which sure, I think it's a little bit more than that, but it gets translated as culture very often, right? So based on Odinala, we form Omenala, right? Based on Odinala, we form Omenala. At the same time, based on Omenala, we form Odinala. So what does that mean? I've been this I can't remember where I had this discussion, right? And I was talking about ancestors. And the way we acknowledge ancestors in Odinala is the same way you would acknowledge an elder in Omenala. If I want to separate the two, they're not really separate, right? In Omenala, right? It's because this is what we see as appropriate in culture for greeting an elder. And an ancestor is an elder. An ancestor is an ancestor because they're an elder in the Igbo tradition, right? It's not that they become ancestors and it's like something totally different from an elder. So your capacity to respect and acknowledge and make way for your ancestors or your elders is reflected in how you can do that with your ancestors and vice versa, right? It's reflected and vice versa. So they also inform each other. But Omenala is as it's done on the land. So you going back to that Ten Commandments thing, right? We ask Allah, what are your laws? Allah says, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not, all that stuff. And then Omenala, okay, our culture, we can't do these things in our culture. These are things we're not going to do in our culture because it's against the Odinala, right? It goes against Odinala, right? Now, Odinala in the modern day gets used to say like spirituality. In the past, sure, they're both spirituality, right? They're both spirituality. But the difference between them is that Omenala is how we act on this land. How you, what you do on that land over there is going to be different. That's okay. We get it. Because that's not, you're basing it based on your land, right? So in my community, the main shrine is to Nemiri, right? We Njaba or Njaba, we call it, right? But the main shrine is to Nemiri. This is very, it's not very, but it's rare because in most Igbo communities, the main shrine is to Allah. But in our land is owned by Nemiri. Nemiri is the original owner of our land. Njaba, the river, is the owner of our land. And so we connect to the river because it's her land, right? Everywhere else, the land owns the land. Allah is Allah, right? Allah, Allah, right? And so they connect to her for that same purpose, you know. So yeah, man, I love her. There's another way. Man, that shit's a jam, dude. I'll post a link on the whatchamacallits. I like the kid. If you want to deepen your relationship with Alice, okay, hold on. Trying to get back focused. I'll go back in the day. Okay, cool. If you want to deepen your relationship with the Alusi, can you build your personal shrine to them? Yeah, you can. You can. Yeah, absolutely. Some of them have instructions. Most of them have instructions. You can also just have something that you use to give them acknowledgement, and that's fine too. It depends how deep you want to get into it. So you can have something to acknowledge Agun, but then you can have an Agun altar, which is a totally different thing, and it's more in depth and deep. It's more like I'm making a commitment to Agun. But you can also just have something they use to connect and that kind of thing that's not as committed, right? So my own altar, I have something that represents my Agun. So yeah. I've always preferred the Old Testament. After Jesus comes, it reads like a fanfic. It is a fanfic, you know. It's like a collection of fanfics telling the same story, you know. Yeah, no, the Old Testament is very rich. It's very rich. The Old Testament is Omena Landi Judah. Exactly. So that's Omena Landi Judah. Perfect. Perfectly said. Now, the under the hood, the mechanical structures is the cosmology, right? The mechanics under the hood is still cosmology. And so because the mechanics under the hood is cosmology, that's how you now see all these, oh, that looks like what Igbo people say, that kind of thing. Oh, that looks similar to this thing. That looks similar to that. Under the hood, you understand it's still engines and carburetors and all that stuff. So you open this car, you open that car. Okay, they both have batteries, they both have engines, but yeah, but once you put the hood down, now we're dealing with Omenala, right? And then again, you have these similarities, but they're different, right? So yeah, Omenala and Judah, that's their Omenala.